I became a dad with a dream to build the perfect family. For 8 years I was married to Amanda, and we had two beautiful children who meant the world to me. When we first met her, ADHD seemed like just another part of her vibrant personality that made her unique. But parenthood changed everything. The spontaneity I once found charming became neglect that hurt our kids. This Father's Day, I thought things might be different. I was wrong. Before I share how my wife's public humiliation became my breaking point, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button to join me on this journey of rediscovering self-worth. I first met Amanda during a college fundraiser for the arts. I was volunteering at the registration table when she burst through the doors 15 minutes late, hair windswept, apologies tumbling from her lips. Despite her tardiness, there was something magnetic about her energy that captivated me immediately. She spoke rapidly, ideas flowing in unexpected directions, and her enthusiasm lit up the entire room. That night, I found myself drawn to her table repeatedly, making excuses just to hear her laugh. By the end of the evening, I had her number and a first date planned for the following weekend. Our early relationship was a whirlwind of spontaneous adventures. Amanda would call me at midnight with ideas for road trips to see obscure landmarks or concerts 3 towns over. Her ADHD manifested as a creative spark that made every day unpredictable and exciting. I found her forgetfulness endearing then. The missed reservations became stories we laughed about later. Her apartment was a beautiful chaos of half-finished art projects and books, opened to random pages. I mistook these signs as evidence of a creative mind, rather than symptoms that would later strain our family to breaking point. After 2 years of dating, I proposed during a hike to a waterfall she had always wanted to visit. The wedding planning was stressful, with Amanda frequently changing themes and forgetting appointments with vendors, but I handled the details she overlooked. Our wedding day was beautiful despite the last-minute changes, and I truly believed we were beginning a perfect life together. The early years of marriage continued much like our dating life. Amanda jumped between hobbies and jobs, never settling long in any position, but her income, combined with my more stable marketing career, kept us comfortable. When we decided to try for children, she threw herself into research about pregnancy and childbirth with her characteristic hyperfocus, creating elaborate birthing plans and nursery designs. Jackson was born after a difficult labor that deviated significantly from all her careful plans. I noticed the first concerning signs when we brought him home. Amanda seemed overwhelmed by the constant demands of an infant. The nursery remained half-painted, and the routines she had researched were quickly abandoned. I took on night feedings, despite my work schedule, telling myself it was temporary, that she just needed time to adjust to motherhood. As Jackson grew into toddlerhood, the pattern became clearer. Amanda would be fully engaged with him for short bursts, creating elaborate sensory play activities or teaching him songs with boundless enthusiasm. Then suddenly her focus would shift, and she would disappear into her phone or computer for hours, barely responding when he needed attention. I found myself rushing home from work to ensure Jackson was fed and bathed properly. Despite these challenges, when Amanda suggested having another child, I agreed. I hoped a sibling would be good for Jackson, and part of me still believed that with another chance, Amanda might adapt better to parenthood. Our daughter Lily was born when Jackson was 2, and the same patterns emerged, only intensified by having 2 children needing attention simultaneously. Amanda would forget pediatrician appointments, miss preschool pickup times, or fail to restock diapers and formula. The children learned early that Daddy was the reliable parent. I started keeping emergency supplies in my car and programmed every school event into my phone with multiple reminders. Our home became a space of perpetual catch-up, with me constantly fixing problems created by her neglect. The first time I suggested Amanda might need therapy, she took offense, accusing me of not understanding how hard motherhood was. Eventually, she agreed to see a psychiatrist who confirmed her ADHD diagnosis and prescribed medication. The results were inconsistent at best. She would take the medication for a few weeks, show improvement, then stop, because she claimed it dampened her creativity or caused side effects. I hired a part-time nanny to help with childcare, but Amanda felt threatened and frequently undermined the help, giving contradictory instructions or dismissing her entirely. The nanny quit within months. Similar patterns occurred with housekeepers and babysitters, until finding reliable help became nearly impossible. My parents attempted an intervention when Jackson started kindergarten, They visited for a weekend and witnessed Amanda sleeping until noon while I managed breakfast school preparation and weekend activities alone. Their gentle suggestions were met with tears and accusations that everyone was against her. She promised to do better after they left, but the improvements lasted barely a week before old patterns resurfaced. My resentment grew alongside my guilt. Was I enabling her behavior by picking up her slack? Was I failing her by not finding better solutions for her condition? These questions kept me awake at night as I lay beside a wife who felt increasingly like another dependent rather than a partner. When she would deflect responsibility by blaming everything on her ADHD, I began to wonder how much was the condition and how much was simply not caring enough to try harder for our family. The impact on our children became increasingly apparent as they grew older. Jackson, now 7, developed anxiety that manifested in physical symptoms. He would complain of stomachaches on school mornings, especially when he knew Amanda would be handling drop-off. His teacher informed us that he repeatedly checked the classroom clock before pickup time, becoming visibly distressed if anyone was even slightly late. At a parent-teacher conference, his teacher gently suggested counseling, noting that Jackson had written a story about a boy whose mother forgot he existed. The pain of reading those words was indescribable. I immediately arranged for him to see a child psychologist who confirmed he was developing attachment insecurities related to parental reliability. Lily, our 5-year-old daughter, displayed different but equally concerning behaviors. While Jackson grew anxious, Lily became my shadow, refusing to let me out of her sight when I was home. She would wake up crying if I wasn't there in the morning, and follow me from room to room, even waiting outside the bathroom door. When asked to draw our family for a kindergarten project, she drew me 3 times larger than Amanda, who was placed in the corner of the paper barely visible. Both children experienced the disappointment of missed events. Amanda forgot to take Jackson to a best friend's birthday party despite multiple reminders. She failed to wash Lily's costume for the kindergarten play, leaving our daughter in tears, as other children performed in carefully prepared outfits. Each time, I would try to salvage the situation, rushing home from work with last-minute solutions. But the emotional damage was already done. The children began to preemptively manage their expectations. They stopped asking Amanda for help with homework or telling her about important school events. Instead, they waited until I was available sometimes, staying up past their bedtimes, because they knew I would at least try, even if exhausted. Watching my children adapt to chronic disappointment broke my heart daily. Teachers and school administrators began recognizing our family situation. The school counselor called me directly rather than contacting our home number. The principal made exceptions for late paperwork, understanding our circumstances without me having to explain. Their kindness was a lifeline, but the implicit pity was another layer of humiliation. My career suffered substantial strain as I attempted to compensate for Amanda's parenting gaps. As a marketing executive for a growing tech company, my position required focus and availability that became increasingly difficult to maintain. Conference calls were taken from school parking lots while I waited for dismissal. Presentations were prepared late at night after children were finally asleep. Important emails were answered one-handed while making breakfast for the family. My boss, initially understanding, became concerned as deadlines were missed, and my attention was visibly divided. I declined a promotion that would have required more travel, knowing the children could not rely on Amanda during my absences. The career I had carefully built began to stagnate as my colleagues advanced past me. The financial implications were significant, especially considering Amanda's employment history consisted of brief enthusiasms, followed by inexplicable departures. Our financial stability was further threatened by Amanda's impulsive spending. She would become fixated on new hobbies, purchasing expensive equipment that was soon abandoned. Art supplies, musical instruments, exercise equipment, and gourmet cooking tools filled our garage unused. Credit card statements became a monthly source of anxiety as I tried to balance her spending against our mortgage and the children's needs. In a desperate attempt to salvage our marriage, I suggested couples counseling. Amanda agreed, seeming genuinely distressed by the growing distance between us. For 6 sessions, we appeared to make progress. The therapist helped establish clearer communication protocols and responsibility divisions. Amanda seemed to gain insight into how her behaviors affected the family, and I felt cautiously hopeful. That hope was short-lived. By the 8th session, Amanda had reverted to missing appointments, or arriving unprepared. The tools and strategies recommended by the therapist remained unused, collecting dust alongside abandoned hobby equipment. The counselor eventually suggested separate therapy paths, hinting diplomatically that the issues might be beyond traditional couples' work. I arranged a weekend getaway for just the two of us, leaving the children with my parents. I envisioned reconnecting without the stresses of parenting and household management. I planned activities that accommodated her attention spans and interests, hoping to rediscover the connection that had first brought us together. The weekend ended after one night, when Amanda impulsively invited friends she encountered at the hotel to join us for dinner. What should have been an intimate evening became a social gathering where I sat silently while she dominated the conversation. We returned home early, the distance between us greater than before we left. Date nights became exercises in frustration. Amanda would be late or cancel at the last minute, or invite others without consulting me. When we did manage time alone, conversations inevitably led to arguments about responsibilities and broken promises. The woman I married seemed increasingly like a stranger one, who viewed me more as a caretaker than a spouse. As our marriage deteriorated, I found myself withdrawing emotionally and socially. Friends stopped inviting us to gatherings after too many last-minute cancellations. I declined invitations rather than explain yet again why Amanda would not be joining me. My world contracted to work and children with little room for personal renewal or joy. Depression settled over me like a heavy fog. I maintained a brave face for Jackson and Lily, but alone in my car or late at night, hopelessness overwhelmed me. The man I had been optimistic and energetic faded into someone I barely recognized in the mirror, a shell going through motions of a life that felt increasingly unsustainable. There were brief periods when Amanda seemed to recognize the damage her behavior caused. She would make heartfelt apologies and demonstrate remarkable improvement for days or even weeks. During these windows, I would allow myself to hope that lasting change was possible. Then, inevitably, the cycle would repeat, leaving me more disillusioned than before. Father's Day approached with a familiar mixture of hope and anxiety. Despite years of disappointments, some stubborn part of me still believed this time might be different. The children had been secretively crafting homemade gifts for weeks, hiding their projects whenever I entered a room. Jackson had created a clay pencil holder painted in my favorite colors, while Lily had drawn a picture book titled The Best Daddy, featuring crayon illustrations of our favorite activities together. Amanda had been unusually attentive to the approaching holiday. For nearly a month, she had made casual mentions of having special plans. She asked my mother about my favorite childhood meals, and inquired about my weekend availability without explaining why. These small indications allowed a seed of anticipation to grow despite my better judgment. I arranged to take Friday off, creating a long weekend to fully enjoy whatever celebration might occur. My supervisor approved the request with visible relief, commenting that I had accumulated too much unused vacation time anyway. I spent that Friday catching up on household maintenance that had been neglected, wanting everything to be perfect for the weekend. My parents texted that they would arrive Sunday afternoon to join us for dinner, adding another layer to the celebration. I suspected Amanda had coordinated with them, which seemed to confirm that actual plans existed. The children were excited by the prospect of a family gathering, helping me clean their rooms and select special outfits for the occasion. When I awoke Sunday morning, the space beside me in bed was empty but still warm. I allowed myself a moment of optimism, imagining Amanda preparing breakfast or arranging gifts. The bedroom door creaked open, but instead of my wife, Jackson and Lily entered, carrying a tray with slightly burnt toast fruit and a handmade card signed with careful penmanship. No mention was made of Amanda's absence as we shared the breakfast in bed. The children presented their handcrafted gifts with pride, and I responded with genuine emotion. Inside, however, familiar disappointment began to settle, as minutes passed with no sign of my wife. Eventually, Lily asked directly, and I had to admit I did not know where her mother was. When Amanda finally emerged from her home office around 11, she was already dressed to go out, keys in hand. She kissed the children hurriedly and explained she needed to pick up her surprise for me. Before I could ask for details or timing, she was gone the front door, closing behind her with finality that seemed disproportionate to a simple errand. Hours passed, with no word from Amanda. Lunch came and went. I sent several text messages that showed as delivered but received no response. Calls went directly to voicemail. The children grew increasingly anxious, asking repeatedly when Mom would return. I maintained a facade of calm, while internally cycling through worry, anger, and resignation. My parents arrived at 3 o'clock to find no celebration prepared. My mother immediately took charge of the kitchen while my father distracted the children with games in the backyard. I continued attempting to contact Amanda, each failed connection, increasing my certainty that Father's Day would join the long list of family disappointments. Just as we were considering whether to proceed with dinner without her, my phone chimed with a text message. Amanda directed us to meet her at Riverview Restaurant, an upscale establishment overlooking the city waterfront. The message included no apology for her absence or explanation for the change in apparent plans. Still, relief outweighed irritation as I loaded the family into my SUV. The restaurant was crowded when we arrived, weekend diners enjoying the exceptional weather and scenic views. The host seemed confused by my request to join Amanda, checking reservations twice before acknowledging a table under her name. He led us through the maze of tables to a prominent location on the outdoor terrace where my wife sat alone, several empty glasses arrayed before her. My first thought was that she looked disheveled, her hair unstyled, and clothing wrinkled. My second was that she had clearly been drinking for some time. Her movements were exaggerated as she waved us over, her voice too loud for the setting as she called my name. Several nearby diners turned to stare, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. As we approached, Amanda stood unsteadily and tapped her water glass with a spoon, creating a ringing sound that cut through conversations at surrounding tables. Before I could intervene, she launched into what appeared to be a prepared speech, announcing to the entire terrace that she wanted to toast her husband on Father's Day. What followed was not a toast, but what she later described as a roast. She began recounting embarrassing stories of my parenting mistakes, exaggerated for comic effect, but recognizable enough to cause my face to burn with humiliation. She detailed private arguments we had experienced, shared inappropriate anecdotes about our intimacy challenges, and repeatedly emphasized how her ADHD made her the fun parent while I was the boring disciplinarian. The children shrank into their seats, Jackson's eyes filling with tears while Lily buried her face in my mother's side. My father attempted to interrupt several times, but Amanda spoke over him, her voice growing louder with each attempt. Other diners were openly staring now, some filming with their phones, others whispering behind menus. The final straw came when Amanda shared that she had forgotten to arrange the special Father's Day surprise she had promised because she had been binge-watching a new series. She laughed as she admitted this, seemingly unaware of the hurt reflected on every family member's face. When she finally sat down expecting applause or laughter that did not materialize, the silence was deafening. I stood without speaking, placed enough cash on the table to cover whatever she had consumed, and gestured for my parents and children to follow. Amanda protested loudly, accusing me of overreacting and ruining the celebration she had planned. I continued walking, one arm around each, silently crying child, leaving my wife still calling after us as we exited the restaurant. The drive home was conducted in complete silence. Even my normally talkative parents found no words to address what had occurred. I focused on driving safely despite the trembling in my hands and the pressure building behind my eyes. The children remained unnaturally quiet, occasional sniffles from the back seat, the only indication of their continued distress. At home, my parents helped settle the children while I sat alone in the darkened living room, trying to process what had happened. When they approached to say goodbye, neither mentioned the incident directly. My mother simply hugged me longer than usual, whispering that I deserved better. My father squeezed my shoulder with a grip that conveyed volumes of unspoken support. Amanda returned home after 9, entering with the artificial cheer of someone who believes they can dispel tension through sheer force of personality. She seemed genuinely surprised when I did not respond to her greeting. When she asked what was wrong in a tone suggesting I was the unreasonable one, something broke inside me. The argument that followed was like none we had experienced before. Previously, I had always tempered my responses, considering her condition and trying to be understanding. This time I held nothing back, detailing years of disappointment, neglect, and embarrassment. I described the damage she was causing our children and the shell my life had become while compensating for her failures. Amanda responded with familiar defenses, citing her ADHD as if it were an impenetrable shield against responsibility. She accused me of never accepting her for who she was, of trying to change her fundamental nature. She minimized the restaurant incident as a joke gone wrong, suggesting I was too sensitive and lacked humor. When raised voices brought Jackson to the stairway, landing eyes wide with fear, I immediately lowered my tone and assured him everything was fine. Amanda, however, continued at full volume, seemingly oblivious to our son's distress. I escorted Jackson back to bed, staying until he fell asleep, then gathered bedding to spend the night in our rarely used guest room. Morning brought no reconciliation. Amanda acted as if nothing unusual had occurred, preparing coffee and chatting about upcoming week plans. I watched her in silence, a profound realization settling over me with unexpected clarity. Nothing would ever change. This was our reality, and would remain so, unless I changed it myself. The week following Father's Day became a period of intense reflection and research. I took 2 personal days from work, something I rarely allowed myself, and used the quiet hours while the children were at school to consider our situation from every angle. I researched ADHD in adults, extensively distinguishing between symptoms of the condition and choices an individual makes in response to those symptoms. I consulted with a family law attorney, initially presenting the meeting as general information gathering. The conversation quickly became specific as I detailed the patterns of neglect and instability the children experienced. The attorney listened without judgment before explaining potential custody arrangements and financial considerations. I left with a folder of documents and a heavier heart, but also with the first sense of direction I had felt in years. Methodically, I began documenting instances of Amanda's parental neglect and household management failures. I created a password-protected file with dates, descriptions, and outcomes of significant incidents. I requested and received copies of Jackson's therapy notes, which painted a clear picture of anxiety stemming from maternal unreliability. Teachers provided written statements regarding missed appointments and academic impacts. I reached out to several trusted friends whom I had gradually disconnected from during my marriage deterioration. Their responses were illuminating. Many expressed that they had been concerned for years but unsure how to help. 2 friends who worked in mental health fields offered particularly valuable perspectives, helping me distinguish between supporting someone with a condition and enabling destructive behaviors. A personal therapy session provided the final clarity I needed. The therapist, after hearing my situation, asked what advice I would give a friend in my position. When I immediately answered that such a friend should prioritize the children's stability and his own well-being, the gap between what I recommended for others and what I accepted for myself became glaringly apparent. Perhaps most importantly, I confronted my own enabling behavior. I had built elaborate systems to compensate for Amanda's shortcomings, believing I was protecting the children and preserving our family. In reality, I had created an unsustainable situation that served no one well. The children were still being harmed. Amanda had no incentive to change, and I was slowly destroying myself in the process. With newfound clarity and determination, I requested a private conversation with Amanda after the children were asleep. I selected an evening when she seemed relatively focused, made sure her medication had been taken, and arranged for minimal distractions. The manila envelope containing divorce papers sat on the coffee table between us, unnamed, but impossible to ignore. Amanda initially attempted her usual deflection tactics, chatting about a new project she was considering or complaining about a minor household annoyance. I interrupted gently but firmly, stating that I needed her complete attention for an important conversation. Something in my tone must have communicated the gravity of the moment, as she fell, silent eyes darting nervously to the envelope. I began by acknowledging her ADHD diagnosis and the challenges it presented. I expressed genuine appreciation for her creativity and the unique perspective she brought to parenting when she was engaged. Then I shifted to the impact of her behaviors on our family, speaking, not in generalities as I had in past discussions, but with specific examples and consequences. When I finally opened the envelope and slid the divorce papers across the table, Amanda's shock appeared genuine. Despite years of strain and conflict, she had never considered that I might actually leave. Her initial response was anger, accusations that I had planned this, secretly been dishonest about my intentions to repair our marriage. I acknowledged that I had indeed come to this decision privately, after years of public attempts at resolution had failed. The manipulation tactics emerged predictably. Tears replaced anger. Promises of radical change replaced accusations. When these produced no visible effect, Amanda resorted to threats about taking the children, challenging custody, making the process as difficult as possible. I listened without reaction, having anticipated each response based on established patterns. The conversation shifted when I outlined the custody arrangement I was proposing. Primary physical custody would remain with me, providing the children the stability they desperately needed, while Amanda would have regular visitation structured to accommodate her strengths and limitations. The schedule included safeguards for the children, while maximizing her opportunities for meaningful connection. For the first time that evening, Amanda fell completely silent. The detailed nature of the proposal made clear this was not a threat or negotiation tactic, but a carefully considered path forward. She asked for time to review the papers with her own attorney, which I had expected and encouraged. As she retreated to her office with the documents, I experienced not satisfaction, but a profound sadness for what might have been alongside the first tendrils of relief. The weeks following were predictably turbulent. Amanda cycled through various strategies to prevent the divorce from proceeding. She contacted my parents, presenting a version of events that painted me as uncompromising and herself as a victim of unreasonable expectations. To their credit, my parents maintained supportive neutrality publicly, while privately assuring me of their understanding. Amanda attempted similar tactics with mutual friends, many of whom had witnessed enough of our dynamic over the years to recognize the incomplete narrative she presented. Several friends contacted me directly, offering support and expressing relief that I was finally prioritizing my well-being and that of the children. These connections became invaluable lifelines during the difficult transition period. The children inevitably sensed the shifting family dynamics despite our efforts to shield them from adult conflicts. Jackson became temporarily more anxious, requiring additional therapy sessions to process his feelings. Lily developed separation anxiety, needing extra reassurance that changes in the family structure would not mean losing either parent's love. We arranged for both children to meet with a family therapist specializing in divorce transitions. Through play therapy and age-appropriate discussions, they began developing language for their experiences and fears. I attended several sessions learning techniques to support their emotional processing. Amanda attended sporadically, her inconsistency noted in the therapist's records. Financial disentanglement proved complex after years of shared accounts and responsibilities. The house where we had raised our children would need to be sold, as neither of us could afford to maintain it independently. Asset division discussions frequently derailed over items of minimal monetary but significant emotional value. My attorney earned her fees navigating these turbulent negotiations. Temporary living arrangements created additional stress. I initially moved into a two-bedroom apartment near the children's school, taking minimal possessions to maintain household stability for them. Weekend visitations with Amanda occurred at the family home, supervised initially based on recommendations from the children's therapist. These transitions were awkward and emotionally draining for everyone involved. My colleagues responded with varying degrees of understanding to my situation. My immediate supervisor proved unexpectedly supportive, adjusting deadlines and meeting schedules to accommodate court appearances and therapy appointments. Others seemed uncomfortable with the personal nature of my circumstances, creating an invisible barrier I had not anticipated. The professional isolation compounded the challenges of this period. Throughout these difficulties, I maintained focus on establishing a new normal for Jackson and Lily. The apartment gradually transformed into a proper home, with spaces personalized to their interests and needs. We developed new traditions for mornings and bedtimes, creating security through predictable routines. School performance stabilized as the constant uncertainty at home diminished. With the legal process advancing steadily, I secured primary custody with a visitation schedule that prioritized quality interactions over quantity of time with Amanda. The arrangement included provisions for monitoring and adjustment based on her demonstrated consistency and the children's well-being. The court appointed a guardian ad litem who conducted thorough interviews with all involved parties, ultimately supporting the proposed custody structure. Finding a family-friendly apartment that would serve as our long-term home became a project the children and I undertook together. We visited multiple properties, discussing pros and cons of each location. The children's input was considered seriously, particularly regarding proximity to friends and activities. The selected three-bedroom townhouse offered space for growth and healing, along with a small yard for outdoor play. Friends emerged as crucial supports during this transition. A rotating group established a dinner schedule, ensuring home-cooked meals appeared regularly during the most intense periods of legal proceedings. Others volunteered to transport children to activities when court appearances conflicted with schedules. These practical demonstrations of care sustained us when emotional resources ran low. The children's therapy continued with positive results. Jackson's anxiety symptoms gradually decreased as he experienced the predictability of our new arrangements. Lily became more independent, no longer needing constant reassurance of my presence. Both children developed age-appropriate language to express their feelings about the family, changes a skill that would serve them well throughout life. Perhaps most surprisingly, Amanda eventually accepted the new reality, with a maturity I had not witnessed previously. Whether motivated by legal advice or genuine insight, she began focusing on improving the quality of her parenting during designated visitation times, rather than fighting the overall arrangement. She enrolled in a structured ADHD management program specifically designed for parents showing consistent attendance for the first time in such interventions. 6 months after that fateful Father's Day, our lives had transformed in ways both challenging and unexpectedly positive. The legal proceedings were finalized with custody and financial arrangements clearly established. The children had adjusted to the new living situation, developing comfort with the transition between households and the different parenting styles they encountered in each setting. Jackson's school performance improved markedly once stability was established. His teacher commented on his increased participation in class and willingness to engage with peers. The stomachaches that had frequently kept him home disappeared almost entirely. At his most recent therapy session, he created artwork depicting two separate but happy homes, a visual representation of his adapted understanding of family. Lily blossomed in the new environment, developing independence appropriate to her age. She no longer followed me from room to room when at home, secure in the knowledge that routines were predictable and promises were kept. Her kindergarten teacher noted improved social skills and emotional regulation, attributing the changes to increased security in her home life. My own emotional health underwent significant improvement as the constant stress of managing an impossible situation lifted. I reconnected with hobbies abandoned years earlier, joined a parent support group, and gradually rebuilt professional relationships that had suffered during the marriage breakdown. Sleep improved, bringing renewed energy and mental clarity that benefited every aspect of life. The most profound change was in my sense of self-worth. Years of compensating for Amanda's deficiencies had eroded my identity beyond the roles of father and provider. Through therapy and personal reflection, I began rediscovering aspects of myself long submerged under family crisis management. Simple pleasures became possible again, from reading for enjoyment to occasional social gatherings with other single parents. Co-parenting with Amanda evolved into a workable arrangement, though not without ongoing challenges. Clear boundaries and communication protocols prevented many previous issues from recurring. Detailed schedules shared electronically reduced missed appointments and transitions. The children's needs remained central to all decisions, a focusing principle that helped navigate inevitable disagreements. Amanda's participation in structured ADHD management yielded noticeable improvements in her parenting consistency. While not perfect, her efforts demonstrated genuine commitment to being present for the children in meaningful ways. Jackson and Lily gradually developed appropriate expectations for time with their mother, neither anticipating disappointment nor expecting perfection. Our extended families adjusted to the new normal, with varying degrees of grace. My parents maintained positive relationships with Amanda for the children's sake, while providing unwavering support for me. Her family initially struggled with the changed circumstances, but eventually accepted the arrangements as beneficial for all involved, particularly their grandchildren. Dating became a theoretical possibility, though not an immediate priority. Several friends attempted well-intentioned matchmaking that I gently declined, explaining my focus remained on family stabilization and personal healing. When ready to explore relationships again, I would approach dating with clearer understanding of healthy partnership requirements and the wisdom gained through difficult experience. The most valuable lesson emerging from this challenging chapter was the distinction between supporting someone through difficulties and sacrificing essential well-being for a relationship that had become fundamentally unhealthy. I learned that true compassion sometimes requires difficult decisions, that children observe and internalize relationship patterns, and that self-respect establishes the foundation for all other life aspects. My journey from hopeful husband to single father was not one I would have chosen, but the growth it prompted proved invaluable. The pain of public humiliation on Father's Day became not an ending but a catalyst for necessary change. Through deliberate choices and difficult transitions, our family found a new configuration that better served everyone's needs, especially those of the children whose well-being remained paramount. As I look toward the future, I no longer carry resentment for what happened, recognizing that holding on to anger would only limit my own healing. Instead, I focus on building a life of authenticity and purpose, modeling for Jackson and Lily the importance of self-respect and appropriate boundaries in all relationships. Their resilience throughout this process gives me confidence in their ability to navigate life's inevitable challenges with wisdom beyond their years. Have you ever had to make an incredibly difficult decision that seemed painful in the moment but ultimately led to healing? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, consider hitting the like button and subscribing to hear more journeys of resilience and growth. Share with someone who might need to know they are not alone in difficult family situations. Thank you for joining me today on this personal journey. Remember that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is choose our own well-being, especially when others depend on us to be whole.